There used to be a time when you could farm a Belize or BVIIBC, open a Swiss bank account, and run off into tax evasion glory. Those days are over. There was a time when setting up your tax or asset protection strategy was the critical factor in designing your offshore structure. Those days are over. The problem with any of these solutions is increasingly banking. It doesn't matter how anonymous your corporations are or what laws protect knowledge of shareholders in Vanuatu or Liberia, where banks require full disclosure and pass that information along to governments. We are moving rapidly towards the age of automatic exchange of information. It doesn't matter if you can open a bank account remotely if you can't wire the funds out, and increasingly likely possibility with small offshore banks. I talk to people every day who ask about a corporation in Seychelles or Belize or Mauritius and want to know if they've got a good setup. Honestly, if you are asking that question, the answer is probably a loud resounding no. Substance aside, that's another conversation for another post. Banking has fast become the most critical differentiator, and the question you need to be asking every expert who sets up structures. Anyone can form companies for you, and usually form them most places in the world easily. Yes, there might be nuances of Kuwait companies that make them useful for residents of a particular jurisdiction due to terms of their tax treaties, and not anyone can open those easily, and certainly not inexpensively, but it's a small issue compared to your banking. Banking is what determines how easily you are able to operate. Banking is what determines in a very real sense whether your money is safe. A corporation is just a piece of paper and entry in a registry. It can be ripped up or moved, and it means nothing. But your bank account holds your very real wealth. If it fails, you could lose everything. If it is frozen, your ability to generate profit or operate, even live, can be greatly diminished. What's the problem? Most lawyers, accountants, and other experts who have spent years specializing in offshore structures have paid attention to the laws far more than the operations. They aren't entrepreneurs, and they don't have to face the very real threats and challenges that go along with subpar banking today. Even worse, they don't have deep relationships at significant institutions that will allow your money to flow with ease. This just isn't their world. If you find someone whose expertise is international banking, who has deep relationships with massive, highly reputable banks, keep that person close. They are worth their weight in gold. Consider a typical conversation with an international asset protection attorney. What structure do you recommend? A Cook Islands Trust with a Nevis LLC. Now ask them where to set up the banking, how much they'll do to set up the banking for you, and go check whether the bank is significant enough to do its own transfers, or whether it needs to run through intermediaries, whether it is able to weather the storm of being caught assisting clients laundering money. While we don't want our banks laundering money for clients, we definitely don't want our accounts affected when someone. Increasingly, structures like the one described above are impractical. They aren't completely impractical yet, but they are getting more and more so because a lot of banks won't touch a Nevis LLC or a Cook Islands Trust. Many want to deal only with entities in equivalent regulatory jurisdictions, or will only deal with a specific handful of offshore jurisdictions such as Hong Kong or UAE. This is why understanding international banking is so critical today. In the modern climate, the US is literally forcing banks out of business by attacking their connection to the US monetary system. Businesses are literally being shut down because of difficulties sending and receiving wires to places they need due to reputational or other reasons. This isn't the situation you want to be in. What's the lesson? When designing an offshore structure, make sure you consider banking from the beginning. Work backwards from what banks will work well for you to what options they will permit in terms of corporations and jurisdictions. Work payment processing in there. Then use this as your platform to determine how you'll figure out tax and asset protection. Anything else simply isn't practical, and if it's not practical, if you can't use it functionally, then none of the rest matters, no matter how well thought out. Banking is increasingly the linchpin of the whole system.